You there,
There we go.
double
I would
check.
ask anybody online if they can hear us, but it doesn't look like we have anybody online. But hopefully we got a backup to the recording, right? Backup to the backup.
Yes, sir.
Maybe just do a quick roll call, sort of on the machines, who's here?
Britt Hornsby.
Jennifer Dobbin.
Josh Ewing,
Spencer Wade and Gary Haas.
good deal. We also have Malia and Aaron with us. Thanks for being here. Just to overview the agenda a little bit, which I'm guessing you all saw. Then, the main deal is to talk about kind of our priorities for the year. Maybe if anybody can kind of help me a little bit, if we can like be watching the clock and sometime around 4:45, we see where we're at in that and see if we can get to a couple of these other options. We should go pretty fast. Does anybody have a hard stop, like you have to leave right at 5? If we went over a little bit, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Okay. I'll try to help with time management, but if you guys can help me out with that too. I feel like this discussion on priorities, obviously we could talk, into the wee hours of the night, very easily. But it'd be good to get to a few of the other ones. So, I have some ideas of how to maybe tackle the discussion, where to start. I'll throw out there more of that, and then take you guys' ideas of how to do it. Thanks everybody who sent in some little bullet points and stuff like that on your thinking. That was not meant to be like a, speak now or forever hold your peace and you can never have another priority, come to your mind. What we were trying to do is kind of get to the could we see if there's some themes that emerge amongst us of, things that are popping up on multiple people's priorities, and maybe that would help us cheat sheet a little bit to where to start, kind of what I was thinking. If any of you looked at mine, I've got 8 things on there. 8 is too many priorities, right? 8's not a priority list, that's a to-do list, kind of deal. So, if we really want to hone in on priorities, I feel like we got to be 5 or under to really have any sort of focus. But then, starting to get there. So I did just a little bit of looking across the different people's priorities, and there were a couple of them that came up multiple times. So I thought maybe we could start with those. And then maybe we could talk about some of the ones that didn't come up a couple of times and you just see if maybe that's intentional. We don't want to focus on those, or maybe it was just, just happened to not be that way. So one that came up on I think 3 folks was housing. I had affordable housing. Thanks, Spencer. Housing. Jen, it was just housing on yours. I guess maybe I'll take a little leeway and say, Gary, maybe reading between the lines on one of yours is limit ordinances, making it easier for people to live here. Maybe that also has a little bit to do with housing, trying to not make it easier that you could actually be here. I don't know, maybe not. So it seemed like housing generally was, a kind of a priority. Britt, that did not come up on yours. So I wonder if you would make an argument for not making housing a priority, or if that was just not your personal.
No, just not my personal, job of the last 2 years that I've got here, stuff I might just say, or not last 2 years, I guess I shouldn't say that so technically, but with that in mind, I was thinking of stuff that might be attainable to start moving for me. So that's all that comes from. Totally support making housing more affordable here.
So just a thought on that, to maybe advance it a little bit further and maybe a little more specific. There's a couple of us that are going up to a housing deal this Friday that I guess CERTA is putting on. That's gonna, surface some tools and opportunities for us to advance housing in the county, and hopefully will give us some ideas. One kind of actionable idea that I had that I thought I'd run by you guys, see what you think, is creating a housing work group, working group. It wouldn't be an official committee, that sort of thing, but who in the community that maybe we could lean on, maybe some folks that have done some building, some people that are passionate about housing, to do some working group and come up with some ideas for what are things holding us back from, like, what are some of the barriers to developing housing? And what would be in the town purview to do about it? In an ideal world, this is a budget discussion, which we can have a little later. In my ideal world, we would have some sort of a consultant or something that knows housing policy and law and stuff that can maybe help that working group. And then we could have a little bit of a feasibility plan or a work product that says, okay, here are 5 things the town could do to advance, more affordable housing, make it easier for people to live here, sort of deal. That was kind of my idea where to start with that, and that might come to a list of, well, here are 3 things in your zoning code that are holding us back. People can't build because of these 3 things, or what have you. Who knows, it might go other directions, or we need financing, or could be a number of those. That's one thought. Any other ideas for like how to kind of go pursuing housing as a priority?
I agree with you about, in particular, I try to think of where the governing body could look into this. I don't think it's the town of Bluff's responsibility to build affordable housing. Because I think that should be left to the private sector or something in that matter, but I think that there are some zoning changes that could be done to make, in particular, middle housing more appropriate. Affordable housing kind of gets me the wrong way, because affordable, according to who? I mean, are we talking about very low income housing? I don't necessarily think that that's what we need in Bluff, but just kind of that middle zone of housing. When we were listening to Mick Thornton, so last name, I can't remember, when he was doing the county housing survey stuff 2 years ago. He presented housing in the form of a ladder, and that the bottom rungs of the ladder are you're leaving your parents' house, going to college, moving into your first apartments, or still staying in your parents' house type of thing. Bluff seems to have that largely covered. The next rung was apartments. The next rung was some kind of condominium or something like that, some starter home, something like that. And then closer to the top where Bluff really has it covered in, it's your second home, it's your retired home, something to that. So, but we were all completely missing the 2 middle, as in there's very few apartment rental type houses, and there are no like townhomes, that type of thing that people could walk into as a starter home.
Yeah.
So that really kind of leads to missing our demographics of having younger people be able to move into town and get themselves established. So I think that's something that we could really focus on looking. Another problem that I see is that it's really hard to get financing for projects like that in this area. We have a lack of lenders who are available to us to provide financial support for things like that. And I don't know that that's an issue that we can solve, but.
Well, I
it
think
is out
the town has a convening power and like learning of resources. Like, I know that financing is a big thing that the CERTA folks are looking at. And so like, maybe the Bluff doesn't solve it, but by being engaged with that, we get new opportunities through other venues.
Right.
I mean, like, I do like the idea of some kind of, I guess this would be more like an advisory board or team or whatever. I do like the idea of that, especially because it's something that people are interested in. It's another good way for people to participate, but it's another group, but it might be good for this. Yeah. It's one of the things I guess I'd comment on is it seems like every time housing's come up, there have been these studies that have gone on. Have you seen this one from Points Consulting? And so.
That's the one that I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, some of this, yeah.
We haven't gotten the electronic version.
Yeah, take a look at that.
I probably have the electronic version somewhere, but.
So- But one of the things, it seems like it comes up repeatedly is like the information is not quite accurate. You know what I mean? Like, we know, and we're not sure where it's not accurate, but we get the general sense. It seems like every time it's go through there, you'll get the feeling that, oh, it's wrong. You know what I mean? On census data and on, just the reality of the situation. So I think having a group that's got some facts like down would be excellent, some like actual true numbers.
But it is nice that the county
Yeah,
did this
it's all-
because we do have at least a ground point to start
So,
on, which we
it's better
didn't have
than-
before.
totally
We had
better
no
than
housing
nothing.
surveys before.
So it's just that like Bluff is because we're such a unique community that when they tried to put their cookie cutter stuff on, it didn't quite work for us.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And, you know, my thought is like, it's less like we need to know what our community is. I mean, we kind of mostly know,
No.
but it's like, what can we do? Like, what are some things that are in our
Exactly.
purview that we could make a difference?
So exactly, like, and yeah, and I think having some true information, it wouldn't take long, like, to just get accurate numbers and then just start jumping for stuff. But I like the idea of advisory board because there's more eyes on it and it's something people are passionate about. And there's
Yeah, I've had some folks approach me already. They're
Yeah.
like, I'd love to get involved with that.
And there's a bunch of different efforts of going in different directions, so it'd be cool. And it affects everybody from the business owners and everything, from employees, you know, and all that. Because I know it's a struggle. I know it's a struggle at Bears Ears Partnership
Yeah.
for housing, so.
Gary, were you gonna say something?
No, I like that. I did know about the committee.
Okay, so I think, you know, housing seems to be one that we could move on and maybe isn't a crazy huge list for us in terms of maybe some budget and some organizing and, you know, but then getting, you know, getting some actionable items coming out of that. Another kind of priority that came up with a few of us was this idea of a secondary water. Let's see, Gary, you had that on your list, Britt, you had that on yours. I had that on mine. I actually had a really interesting conversation with a business owner about this earlier on this week. But, you know, I think it's in our strategic plan, like secondary water is like exploring, it's in our strategic plan. But I was talking with this business owner and I was like, so what would it look like? Like, where would you put it? Like, where would, you know, this stuff go? How much would it cost? You know, like all that kind of stuff. And it seems like that could be a step we could take this year to explore it. Is like, okay, again, it takes a little bit of money, but like, let's do some sort of feasibility study of like, what would it cost to do that? And it is a kind of water right protection thing because we are at risk if we don't use it, that we may end up losing that water right. What would it take for us to develop it at least enough to preserve that water right? And, you know, get it to some citizens. So that was 3 out of 5. It's not a 5 out of 5. But I
I put
wondered.
4 out of 5. I
Yeah.
just didn't think to add it to the list.
I'm on board. with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that would be how it happened with some of this was like, okay, we raise this and then we go like, oh yeah, I'm not against that.
Yeah.
If someone was against it, I think it would be good for us to discuss it, right? Be like,
Right,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not so sure we should go down that road for.
Well, so I do want to say that like for me, secondary water was kind of like nested in like the actual priority for me, which is the water department and figuring out something with that, at least starting the process going. And one of the reasons secondary is in under that process for me is that like, I feel like it comes up constantly when you're trying to you can't have one conversation without the other. It seems like they're constantly in and out with each other. So this would be something good we could work on together while we're working. It's good to have a project while we're working on the overall project of transferring us things over and having all.
Yeah, my thought on that, just to be honest with you, Britt, is that having something positive to work on and develop relationships, it will be helpful for us. And not necessarily tying it to like, we'll do this, we'll do that, but it's just
By
like,
no
hey,
means.
this is a collaboration we can do, we can move forward. And hopefully it helps us address some of the more thorny issues through relationship development, trust building.
Exactly. And I don't mean it as a quid pro quo kind of thing. It was just definitely more as a, trust building, give us something to work on. And because when we sat in on the strategic planning and succession planning talks with BWW, there was interest from several town members to be part of secondary water, kind of anything really.
Yeah, secondary water honestly kind of overtook that whole entire process, I thought,
Yeah.
for several of the meetings, it just kind of, I felt like we got off track a little bit with what we were gonna do to try to, we had all kinds of ideas being thrown around about how we could implement secondary water in town.
Cause I do think it's all like a thorny, water in general can be a thorny issue and that like it's easy to get distracted by where you have a difference of opinion, but there's a lot of overlapping opinion. And I think secondary is one of those. So yeah, just as part of the process.
Yeah, that's a feeling I have. But on your point about the larger water issues, I had described it as kind of relationship building as a priority. I feel like that's kind of like a little vague for like a town council priority. I do want to do that, like we've talked about, building a relationship with the sheriff and I think all of us, if we lean in on relationship development as a priority, it's not necessarily a policy priority, but it's a how we operate priority. That goes into play with the water, it goes into play with EMS, county, all those things. So I think, yeah, we don't agree. So I think it sounds like there's some pretty good agreement around secondary water. And we can think about how that we execute on that. Another one that was pretty common, and I did not have on mine, but there were a couple of other folks. Gary mentioned kind of, you were a little more specific. You said roads, stop and yield signs, alleyways. I kind of lumped that in kind of a roads thing. Britt, you had just roads generally. I did not have that on mine, but it's come up really recently, talking with Aaron about some of the outstanding issues. And then later on in the agenda, if we get time to talk about budget, we need to talk about budget for roads. So I guess like I'm not passionate about roads quite in the same way I might be about some of the other ones, but it does feel like we need to keep making good progress, like adequate yearly progress or something on roads. And so maybe roads could be, for now, maybe a little less priority, but something we keep our focus on.
It'll come up again and again, whether we want it to or
Yeah.
not, it pops up. But
Roads are one thing that the community really sees a tremendous impact with. I mean, we definitely hear when we're doing the roads project, we definitely hear reactions from the community about it. So I think that's something that's really important to the community.
they're big ticket items,
Mhm.
And we have a decent amount of funds, like a match with the county this year.
We have access to a lot, but it's
Yeah.
just, it's just with that kind of money, using it.
And then I'll say one other one that I saw, let's see how many folks had it. Britt, you had kind of EMS, I had public safety, fire, EMS. Let's see. I guess we were the only two that really did that. I mean, I guess, you guys, I'm a firefighter, I come from that side and I'm like, we're in a bit of a tenuous situation as a town right now and the county situation's been tough. And so I just feel kind of like, I want to kind of prioritize like trying to make progress and do something on that. But I don't know if, that's a shared concern or a shared priority. So maybe it's worth discussing that a little bit.
So, I mean, I just put like EMS like broadly, like, cause it just seems like there's so many little issues going on all at once. It keeps popping up. I don't feel super secure about it. I mean, super grateful for everything, but I don't feel super secure about it moving forward, over the next 10 years or whatever. With all the challenges. And we've talked about it a fair amount of times, like, we've had people come in from the county and talk about the way EMS or EMT pay works and, all this stuff, and it's just a very expensive problem to have, so I don't know, I'm up for options to make something better, secure.
Seems like a pretty important one. Gary, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree. It is important. It is important, but how do you get, when I first started up in Bountiful, they had a volunteer fire department. And it's hard to get the funding to up that. To be able to have someone here like all the time. I know some of the volunteer firemen are school teachers in Blandy, or yourself and out of town. And I think I would like to see more our relationship with the sheriff's department. But then EMS, I think it'd be even more important than the fire department. In that I'd rather have my house burned than my wife die.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'd rather have had medics there to help get her, you know, if she needed transportation. I know sometimes we have to wait for an ambulance to come clear from wherever. And I don't know the answer to that, because I've seen the list for volunteers, you know, come train, come help. And getting the people to do it. Is a tougher situation.
I think another one of the tough situations about that was when Jason was here talking about just, you know, when they downgraded us from being transport to just responders, you know, his comment was we would have to have a 12-person EMS staff in order to transport patients. I've lived here for close to 40 years. I don't think I ever remember a point in time when we had 12 EMS on our ambulance team.
I don't think you could find a town in America that has 500 population that could do that.
I
Right,
mean, you run the budget on it, it's nuts, like, I mean, so.
well, and but is that feasible, or is that something that, you know?
Well, you guys know, I've also been in EMT. I think the reality is EMT is actually harder to solve for than fire. More likely that you need a contractual relationship
Right,
to make it happen. You can also have, you know, fire and volunteers that help.
mhm,
You know, and here in our county, there's two options, there's UNHS and there's the county. And figuring out relationships and like, does Bluff have some skin in the game or not, you know, in those relationships? So I guess my thought with this as a priority is not that, like, say, we would solve it in 2026, but we really make a concerted effort to develop relationships, explore our options, maybe make some moves in a direction to have more autonomy, more, you know, but it's not gonna get solved this year, but it's like, it's also, if we don't start working on solving it this year, it's not gonna get solved next year either.
well, and Gary Lichtenstein did bring us, you know, I thought it was an interesting proposal, at least to start looking at, you know, I mean, how could we make our fire department more self-sufficient and truly be a Bluff Fire Department rather than being, you know, dependent on the county. So I think that I think it is good to have the conversations and look at some ways to explore stuff like that, as well as how can we develop these things to make it possible in the future. And I agree with you. I think fire is an easier way to do that than EMS is, because I think fire, you know, you can branch out and do wildfire management. You can, you know, those were kind of some of the suggestions that Gary had brought forth to us, was how can we have our fire department, but get it paid in the different avenues.
Did you have something there?
Yeah, so Jeremy Hogard, the EMS director of San Juan County, he actually just recently presented to the San Juan County Commission. I'd like to encourage you guys to listen to it, because if I understood correctly, he has requested a 1% tax coming from somewhere, that would actually go straight into emergency response. And so that would be a way for the county to be uplifted, paying, to be able to compensate better. And then eventually maybe even increasing the size of our space to maybe encourage EMS to come down and stay overnight. So just something to throw into this conversation that might help thrive.
Yeah, thank you.
And that would have been during last week, so that would be the work session probably at
Yeah.
9 AM. So San Juan County work session at 9 AM. Thanks, Malia, for following up.
Yeah, and I feel like things like tax revenues and like needing to look at those sort of options, you know, like nobody likes to talk about taxes, but like also nobody likes there not to be someone to come put their, you know, fire at their house or, you know, respond to a medical call. And I think if town residents are willing to pay for anything, well, public safety is probably one, you know, of those. So I think exploring those options, what are the revenue streams? You know, that kind of thing would be something we can work on this year. Um,
And it is something we've dabbled in, you know, like trying to address a little bit, we could, but nothing such like huge concerted effort, like trying to do the scholarship kind of thing, maybe paying people going, you know, for EMT, stuff like that, but just never really like popped off.
and, you know, after that, it kind of comes down to some issues that were named by a couple of people, but not really even a quorum. But I'm guessing that some of that is also just like, we can't all have top priorities, but. One that I think is worth a discussion is, you know, Jen, you know, listed as, I don't know if you meant these in priority 1, 2, 3, 4, but your number one item was Cooperative Cultural Center. Britt, you had the CCC as kind of a number 2 on yours. I guess I did have it like kind of down my list, like number 6. Again, it's kind of one of those I don't feel quite as passionate and urgent about as some other issues, but I also feel like it's like continuing to make adequate progress and explore our options makes a lot of sense.
Feel like with that one, of all the things we've got going, like that's the one that's like the most typical to change. Like, I mean, we were so, like, without losing that grant, we would be through construction, like near through, right, by now, like, or around now, so.
Yeah.
So it's really just like finding, it's that just connecting funding with it, we can go, it'll take off quickly, and it'll be something that town does want people that, at least people that want it, you know, like, they want to see it flipped, so. That's why it's a priority for me, is because I do think it could be something that could happen quickly if we,
Pretty attainable,
yeah,
just funding dependent.
yeah, as
I mean,
opposed to everything else that's got all these, well, we can start having a plan, this is. like,
Yeah, we
here's
have
plans
plans for you. And I think it's something that will be an incredibly valuable asset to town once we do have it completed.
And
There's a lot of people who are skeptical about that statement.
and
I don't happen to be one of them.
And it hits across the board in a bunch of different sections of the strategic plan, so.
Anybody argue that we shouldn't have an emphasis on CCC?
I didn't put it on my list, but I would add it to my list.
I would just add one. All these acronyms are killing me. Okay, I get the CCC, I got that,
Okay.
but I had to look up some of these, the SSD and all these, you know, spells out.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Help a poor guy.
So Gary, there's a whole list of.
There's an acronym list.
Yeah.
so I-
Yeah, I felt that
I've
same way.
Googled everything.
The first time I went to the league, I was just like, holy cow, acronym city, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh,
I'll get that.
okay.
Yeah, I think one of my first town council meetings, I was, you know, I know a fair amount of them from the Leah, but I was like, I don't know half of these. I had no idea what you guys were even saying.
Yeah.
It is I think it's a really good point, Gary, and I try to do this in my work too, but to the extent we can use plain language and actually say things like the full thing, at least the first time you say it. You know, it's, I think, helpful, particularly for the public. Once we're all steeped in it and maybe there's a work session, there's no one online, you know, it's a different matter, but the extent we can avoid acronyms, I think it's helpful for the public too. Another, you know, kind of general area that came up, it came up on a couple of ours. I called it kind of quality of life, and I put underneath of there like dark skies and trails. Jen had dark skies and trails on her list separately. I don't know that anyone else had.
Not just improve livability.
Yeah, oh yeah, livability. I don't know if that's kind of what you were thinking. But it's those things that make living here cool and improving that quality of life, ease of access to our, you know, the stuff in our backyard. You know, again, I'm not sure I would put that on the same level as like, housing or fire and EMS, but it also, it feels like to me, like if you can make a few nice progress on some of those things. I mean, I can just envision, like, once this playground is done, like, people are gonna be stoked. You know what I mean? It seems like a small thing, but they're gonna be stoked, right? If we got a trail at Cottonwood Watch or something like that added to our town, I'm like, oh, that'd be stoked, right? But like. So there's a bit of that, you know, I think
Well,
dark
you-
skies and trails are a little different animals, but.
You had building, building working relationship with the business owners as well.
Yeah.
One of the most uniting things that almost every business owner that we had when we were looking at organizing the town was a wish for a trail that connected the east side to the west side of town. That was a safe access point for guests and residents both to, to get across town safely, not in cars. We have, we have lots of motorcyclists, we have lots of people who come in here and once they get their vehicle or whatever parked, they don't wanna move it again, they wanna walk. And so, that connecting east to west side was really one request that almost every business owner that we had in town was on board with and said that would really benefit our existences. So I think there's a lot of these smaller things, I guess where I'm trying to go with is that bridge into kind of some of the other webs and are kind of connected in ways.
Like the walking trails and ways to get people around on foot here is like goes into public safety. I mean,
Yeah.
Sure you had your near misses, on the highway, groups walk.
Yeah,
around.
Yeah.
Yes, it's dark and we live on a very busy highway and we don't have a way to cross the wash without crossing it on the very busy highway.
Yeah, I think finding, it's really awesome when you can have a sweet spot that will improve kind of residential quality of life and the business community. Finding those sweet spots where, you're kind of lifting both sides up. Seems like, good win-win. Not really sure what the next step on that particular one was like. I'm guessing like, unless you build another bridge over the wash, you gotta figure out some way.
Luann had delved it and the active transportation committee has delved into quite a few things.
We have a whole active transportation plan that was approved.
Yeah, I've looked over it a little bit, but that, like,
I
connecting
don't-
the two sides of
Yeah,
town.
I
There's
don't
issues,
necess-
with it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with where she had chosen to cross, cause it doesn't, but, that could go well with. And we don't have a lot of walkers in town to the school, but if you were to put a footbridge over the wash or something that came in near the school, then kids could easily access school if they were walking. Because the one family that does walk to school has to go across the wash to get to the school.
Yeah.
I think that there's several different aspects of that make it livable. And there again, like Aaron said, we do have stuff that has been in works and a very dedicated set of residents already who are committed to working on that and just, I think we just need to keep it on the radar.
I guess my, just thinking how, how to come a little bit to a conclusion. It feels good to me to try to keep our priority list 5 and under. And then it's not like we don't work on other things that aren't on our priority list. But if we had a priority list of housing, secondary water, roads, public safety, and the CCC, would that feel good like our top 5?
Mhm. Yeah, I like the suggestion that Gary made of limiting ordinances to make it easier. I think that maybe not limiting, but really looking at when we think we want to create an ordinance, who it affects, how it affects, and why it is that we need to do that right now. Because there are some that are gonna need to be created, but I think it's just really up to us as a board to question those and say, okay, is this the right way that we do this?
And how do you enforce them?
Exactly, enforcement is a huge issue on that one. Yeah.
I really like that. I think maybe it's more of a mentality for us than anything, but it's like. Hey, if it's not on this priority list and then something else comes up, it's like, okay, do we really need that? Is it gonna make it better to live here or harder to live here? And, you know, have that on top of our mind. You know, sometimes we don't have a choice about things. The state says you have to have an ordinance, but even then, maybe sometimes we can do things to limit its negative impact on.
This could be something that the advisory team or folks work on, is like even reviewing existing ordinances or, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. Is there anything?
And I guess just to emphasize, just because things aren't on this top 5, doesn't mean an individual council member isn't passionate about it or staff's not gonna work on it. You know, I think there's some projects that would be really cool to do to support the business community, like the wayfinding signage that the Bob folks have brought up. It's like, okay, that doesn't need to be a town priority, but maybe we could still do it this year. It's not that expensive, it's not that hard. We could get money from the county.
Right, oh, yeah.
So it feels like there are some of those other projects, and my only thought is like, it would be maybe helpful. And maybe what Aaron and I could do is take a look at some of these and come up with like a secondary project list that we do a little prioritizing on. And I realized that even mine was this big long list, it was like too much, right? But like, maybe we've got our 5 main priorities, but then we have some smaller projects that we are also prioritizing in, so it's not just like no prioritization.
What I was kind of thinking is like. What you would discuss today is like what all 5 of you are gonna work on, how we're going to prioritize staff bandwidth, like these are the ones that are. I think Josh, you used the word like big rocks that like we're all pulling for. And then that's not to say that any of the other items that you all addressed aren't important and like. We as the staff can help support you on, or, you know, it's, you know, more of, I don't wanna say like an individualistic thing that you're moving forward. You know, it's probably still on the radar, but it's not gonna be the items that are coming up every single month that like, hey, what's the progress report? What are we doing on, you know, X, Y, and Z? What connections are we making? What budget are we, evaluating to make sure if we meet the 5?
Well, does that feel like?
Can I add like secondary water, just like water more broadly, then I guess if it's gonna be all 5 of us, we're not, because there's stuff like the soil service aquifer, you know, things like that, which would be nice, you know what I mean? I just don't want us to get pigeonholed to just
That kind of water protection,
yeah.
but with an emphasis on the secondary water.
That's like a quick action.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's, you know, I don't know who all was here in this room when the San Juan watershed folks come down. The lady from the state said something pretty concerning about, contamination around the White Mesa Mill. It's like, well, we need to know what's going on with that. I mean, like, we just need the facts and like, that's just something we need to stay on top of. So I've been trying to chase that down a little bit. So I'm with you, like, preserving and protecting our water and our water rights.
Well, and understand, I think we have a very unique water system in Bluff, and it pops its head up when we're having septic tank discussions. It pops its head up on, are we contaminating the river? And are we contaminating the river, but not necessarily contaminating our drinking water aquifer, which is several hundred feet below that contamination? And so we really are in a unique situation. So I think it's important enough with us as a board to understand how water, you know, how water affects us in all the ways, and to really be educated on that, not make necessarily emotional driven decisions out of that, but make fact-based decisions
Because it's such
on
important,
stuff like that.
this is
Yeah.
very important one,
Yeah.
you'll hear it repeatedly, like from folks, so having it as a priority means we'll always have something to say to them, a little positive, but
Do live in the desert.
living in death.
So we're lucky as all get out that we have such good water for living in the desert.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting it up north.
Yeah.
Colorado River project is, you know, that's a real deal. And I think we really do a disservice if we aren't paying attention to what's going on downstream.
All right, well, I think it's good to coalesce around kind of 5 top priorities. Maybe we'll do a little bit of work on coming back with some like secondary projects and do some prioritizing on that. That seems like good progress, so thanks, everybody.
It was good to see everybody's priorities too.
Yeah, I thought so. In terms of a segue, I did a budget training with Utah League of Cities and Towns, and they keep reiterating is that you can tell people's priorities and values by their budgets. Right, like what you choose to spend money on is what, you know, policy. Now, sometimes you have to spend money on certain things. You have to spend road money on roads. We've got some budget kind of discussions we need to come up, so maybe just for sake of time, I encourage, Aaron sent out our January financials. I went through and looked at them carefully. I have a bunch of questions for you, but none of them are needed to be in front of the whole council and, you know, take up time. But maybe Aaron, if you walk us through the thinking on a budget amendment process.
Yeah, so,
Why we need it.
yeah, so we are just over halfway through our fiscal year. Again, that ends June 30th. So we've got just a couple months to go. The good news is that our revenues are higher than projected. They are still down year to date versus prior, but they're higher than what, you know, I had taken the sky is falling, because I'm a very conservative budgeter. So the good news is we have more tax revenue, you know, it's still down, but that means that you guys have more wiggle room. We also talking about roads. Michael was able to secure, as opposed to he's come in around 55,000 annually for the San Juan County or San Juan Transportation Board matching funds. It's up to it's right around 110,000 in matching. So that's a huge pot of money that he's able to pull from. It's important when we look at budgets that, you know, where Bluff has always, the previous council members, had kind of built up a bit of a nest egg, which is fantastic. And those are reserved for capital projects. So that's probably something that we also should delve into, and it'll impact how you want to do some of your strategies this year. But long story short, we have, at least as of right now, it looks like more money coming in that can be allocated. And you can do budget amendments as often as you'd like. Best practices is maybe once or twice a year. In preparation for so many of you going through the budgeting process for the first time, it would be my goal is that we go ahead and do a budget amendment on this fiscal year. We also have some categories that are nearing, you know, kind of the top of what we had budgeted for, and we need to push those specifically with roads. So we'll go through that process, and then that'll kind of set you up, and you'll feel a little bit more comfortable with the full year budget that must be approved, depending on if you do truth and taxation, either in June, late May, June, or August. So what I'd like to see is potentially presenting to you all some recommendations during the town council meeting next week, and then getting feedback on how much time you want to digest. Maybe it's like another work session, or, you know, some time allocated to kind of going through and making sure you're all comfortable and adding what you'd like to see. Scheduling a public hearing. So we have to do like a full notice. This is like a Class A notice because we are talking about public funds. So we schedule that and then hold the public meeting or public hearing. And then you get a 10-day comment period. And then after the 10 days, you can approve an amended budget. So it is a little lengthy. This is not going to happen next week, but we can kind of start the process. I think with that as well, though, as we're talking money, the master fee schedule also needs to go through the public hearing process. And so we've got a couple items that have popped up that like aren't on our master fee schedule. So we kind of combine those. That had gone through a pretty rigorous amendment last year, or early last year. So it's there's a lot out there, but we have a couple items that we'd like to go over, and adjust, so.
Yeah, we had the first meeting of the cemetery board today and. Mayor Lebanon reminded us that like we actually can't charge people for a cemetery plot right now because we don't have that on our fee schedule. And people actually may want to buy a plot at some point.
Okay.
So that's one of the things to fix in the fee schedule. And then on the budgeting process, probably the big one that's driving us is like, we've already spent everything that we budgeted for in transportation, but we have a lot more transportation money. And like, we don't want to leave this matching table from the county on the table. We don't want to leave this matching funds from the county on the table. And so we need to bump up our spending in order to get the matching, but we have the money. It's not like we don't have the money. But it's a pretty significant chunk of change that it feels like from a transparency standpoint, we really ought to amend our budget if we're gonna spend another couple $100,000 on roads, which is probably about what it would be, right? A couple $100,000 above what we budgeted.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll get a little budget practice for us newbies, and address a couple of timely things. And then we'll get to work on the main budget where we can apply more of these priorities. Yeah. Okay, anything else on?
I don't think so, maybe we can just open the capital projects kind of all is in line with this too. It's a lot coming down the pipes all at the same time, but it's probably worth looking at that with the budget, because the budget usually calls for either money to move to capital projects or come out of capital projects. So you're probably gonna see all three. It's probably gonna be budget, master fee schedule, and capital projects. Thanks.
Unfortunately, none of those are like massive new, it's like more tweaks than it is like total revisions. The council was already in a pretty good place with all these things, so it's just.
Kind of, we've been trying to focus on prioritizing capital projects and there's some big ones out there that we haven't come close to covering in our, mainly the airport. We have not come close to deciding whether if we're going to really have a big capital project. We better get serious about where we're gonna find money for that, because that's a big bill.
Okay, one of the things that we've talked about wanting to do, and since we had CCC on our top 5 priorities, was to do a walkthrough over there, especially for those of us that haven't been over there for a while and seen everything. I guess the question is, do we want to try to take one of our meetings to do that? Do we want to try to do something on the side? How long, Malia, how long do you think it would take us to do a decent walk through over there?
An hour would be plenty. Maybe an hour and a half, since there'd be multiple people and maybe some questions coming up.
So I guess, one option would be we try to tack it on to a meeting, but like keep that meeting pretty short and then
Kind of what I was thinking.
go over. So it's kind of same, only one day's commitment, but a little bit longer time.
That's what I was thinking.
The thing to remember about that is we don't have any electricity on there. So,
Gonna go while still light.
Yeah.
We could maybe
Yeah.
go over there and then
Yeah.
come back.
yeah,
that's what I was
come back and
That's
have
what I
a
was
meeting.
thinking,
Yeah, but we want to do it when we have daylight. I've spent time in that building in the dark and I don't want to do it right now, so.
So, Aaron, I was just gonna pull up our little agenda planning thing,
Can we get printouts of the plan, like that?
Yeah, so we can kind of clue you in on what our vision is of, what the steps we've already walked through with it and, yeah, kind of. Yeah, why we're excited about
I had.
Public meeting, people are welcome to join.
it.
If there's a little extra money somewhere in the budget, we should get some new chairs.
Hey,
Just-
your budget's
just
good, your
find-
priorities.
Just find them.
Yeah, I'll look for them. I'll find them. Also.
But this would go into the.
Oh, you want it there.
I think we could do it next. Could you guys pull it off next, having a bit longer meeting next week? I don't think we have a crazy long actual agenda that we need to do.
Yeah.
So if we could do like an hour over there, get back over here and then do 20 minutes, half an hour, is that all right?
Yeah.
That works for me.
It'd be great to get y'all, everybody up to speed too, because then we could share more. I mean, because one of my priorities was to share what we've done, because like outside of like people hearing like, you know, for the fall through with UDB and stuff, they haven't really heard where we are and. You know,
It's really helpful, yeah, to know.
yeah, and that's.
All right, well,
People think it's, yeah.
Well, and just, yeah, like I said, just get you to understand our vision. I mean, we've already got three projects going on over there, you know, we've got our wood bank, we've got recycling, we've got. Well, we kind of laugh about it, but it's there. There's big piles of wood over there. So,
I mean, and it went from, you know, us working with UDB where there was like too many cooks in the kitchen
Yeah.
to like, there haven't been very many cooks in the kitchen for like a year and a half. So it'd be cool to have. You guys see what we can do.
Yeah.
Forget about small sleep.
Well, good deal. I think that'll be the plan. You can think about how we notice that. I mean, it'll be a public meeting. We'll be over there if someone wants to walk around with us.
Yeah, so how do we do that? We just record it and post
Yeah.
it?
So we'll record it. It gets a little funky, just. We've done it before. It's no big deal. For the two items that Malia and I have thought about putting on the agenda, we probably like want to be seated to discuss them, if they're like specific. But yeah, I think that's just fine. So, and we'll post on the door. Yeah, people can come see us. So,
And just warm and chilly,
yeah.
and I'm blessed.
Seems like it's been summer out, so it's hard. Okay, that'll be the plan. Maybe basically we roughly say the first hour over there, transition, be back over here at 5:15 and try to be for sure done by 6.
Stuff, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that's a good plan. Last thing on the discussion, again, this is not for a vote because we're in work session, was to kind of revisit the rules of procedure. I had gone through the whole document and just done a red line, which were my suggestions of maybe how we would implement some of the discussion we had last time. There were also just a number of like cleanup items that were just like, kind of didn't make sense in there. But the, you know, I think, you know, if you got a chance to review it and you have any, you know, questions, feel free to bring it up. But I think the 2 or 3 main ones that we talked about last time was under rule, now I have it 8, the procedure for proposing and disposing of motions. And I added, in the instance that the mayor is not prepared to call a vote on an issue listed on the agenda scheduled for a vote, a member of the council may make a motion to call for a vote, if it's seconded, and then go through. So it's just to clarify that there is still that motion procedure to call for a vote if the, you know, if the mayor doesn't feel good about it, but the rest of the council does. So that was kind of the main one on that discussion item. And then the other one was on kind of the agenda, and the specific language is, let's see, I guess rule 13, the way it's listed now. Well, rule 12, I'll just say, I clarified it to say that the agenda for the meeting, you know, will be prepared by the mayor or mayor pro tem in the mayor's absence. That wasn't real clear before. And then 13 was the main thing. Any council member may request an item to be added to the agenda prior to the agenda being published to the public. Items may be placed on the agenda either by the mayor or at the request of 2 council members if the mayor is not inclined to agenda the item for that meeting. So that was the discussion we had, that if for some reason I think we shouldn't do it, but a council member feels strongly, they have another council member suggest it, and then it would be on the agenda. How do folks feel about that wording?
I still like the 1 council member. Cause we're a 5-member council. With the mayor being one of the 5. And he runs, you know, he's to running the agenda. But items to get on the agenda, I still lean towards just that one council member feels strongly enough to get it before the council. That it could be presented then to all of us at the same time. With it being put on, I couldn't find anything that said in the law that it had to be two members.
It doesn't have to be, the council can change it and they did.
Right, and, well, there was nothing that said. What I could read was that the council has the right to make the rules of the policies and procedures, the rules of it. And that, and when they made it, I mean, they were just reviewed in July of last year. When it was all changed and set, and it's been working for them. We just had this one little blow up with my secondary water deal, or the septic systems. But I'd lean towards leaving it at the request of one. I see it being a rare occurrence, you know, if citizens approach one of us and push it, and somebody else doesn't wanna stick their neck out yet. That one could do it.
Yeah, what are other folks saying?
I mean,
I think it's a rare, we are talking about a very rare scenario.
so much with so much of this stuff, you're like phantom boxing, shadow boxing hypotheticals, you know, so often. I mean, I'm comfortable either way, as I definitely saw some issues the other way too, where it was like I said, these runaway agendas where it was like 20-something points to it, you know, or things would get brought that weren't quite hashed out, you know what I mean? It would just take a lot of time, you know, that we have very little of, but so, I mean, I saw it both ways, so I'm comfortable either way personally. But you guys,
I mean, not being on the council very long, the only downside I could think of with having just one council member would be what you said of just maybe somebody putting on too many items, but other than that, I don't really necessarily, well, I guess, and what we had talked about, it maybe like if it wasn't, like if everyone else didn't quite feel like it was ready to come to the public, or like maybe we wanted to talk about it more, but this isn't saying, that's not saying for a vote, it's just putting it on the agenda, period. So I don't think I have a problem with it being one council member.
I'm okay with one too. I would just like to ask that we all can be considerate of other people's time and, you know, I mean, not just throw, you know, I think just even, you know, I'm just throwing it to Josh, hey, can we talk about this week, you know, I mean. I don't know, I didn't really realize that it was quite that rigid of a structure. When we were on before, because it was kind of this like, oh, can we talk about this? And would say, how about we talk about this some other time because we're too busy this week or something like that.
and really one of the main issues I saw is just like, as long as it doesn't have the word vote on it, that's what really makes it difficult, is to want something to be voted on. I can see that being an issue, having it up for discussion is one thing, but voting, and it's mostly that, like I've said, I think that's the most failed votes I've seen 2 years has been stuff that was put on for a vote, but didn't have enough time and things like that. Just, and that's not so bad as much as like our time, it's just, it doesn't look very good to the public, I think, if things are coming up and failing, like. And it doesn't feel good for the person that brought it up either, so.
Well, maybe to that point, if we could just add a little clarifying language, leave it as one person can add an item to the agenda for discussion.
Yeah.
Right, but the vote piece is figured out on that, the way we talked about above, where it's like call for the, you know, sort of
I
deal.
mean, I'm fine with that.
So,
That sounds like.
and then like, yeah, I think it would be rare where I'd be like, hey, I think we should put this off, and someone's like, no, we have to talk about this time. That's a pretty rare situation, maybe.
I mean, the votes would kind of put you in a corner a little bit, because you're about to have to know what you're talking about, nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think. Why don't we do that? We'll leave it at one, like one for discussion, not necessarily for a vote. And then, and I'll clarify that. So, I'll work up just a fresh version of this that makes that more clear. And then we can vote on it maybe at the next meeting. Just to have it all cleaned up and clarified. Cool. All right, well, it sounds like we got a game plan there. I'll encourage you to read the, you know, the tweaks that I bring up, and we can, you know, preview them before we vote on them. But that seems to be a good happy medium direction of. Okay. Any other items that anyone wants to share real quick before we adjourn? I was gonna ask you something. Did we finalize the date for that potluck?
Yes.
November 28th,
What's that?
that's one for now?
The, yeah, February 23rd.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Saturday, February 28th. What's the time? Do you,
I don't remember the time that we said. We'll clarify that. I just wanted to, what's that?
Five.
At 5, okay. Kind of in an effort to celebrate all the hard work of folks who have recently cycled off of fire department and planning and zoning and this council. The idea was to do kind of a gratitude for service potluck. And my wife Kirsten has been willing to kind of run the traps and find out who's available on what days. And the Bears Ears Partnership has volunteered to do it over there, so we can kind of use the courtyard, have some outside space as well as some indoor space. So I know not everybody will be able to come, but I wanted to put it on your radar screens. You should see flyers going up around town and email going out and stuff like that pretty soon. But just so that's on your radar. By no means is it a mandatory thing for anybody to attend, but kind of a nice thing for us to express our gratitude for folks who have been serving.
What time again? Roughly.
5.
But yeah, I thought I'd get that on radar, but then I forgot to ask Kirsten before I came over here how that got nailed down, so glad you did.
There's the water board meeting tomorrow. Yeah,
Water board tomorrow at
at
that, right?
the library.
Yep. Okay. Thanks so much for the discussion. I think we'll call it good for the day. Good work and a good work session.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's 5:04 PM, meeting adjourned.